Fire for them, fire for them. If you're looking for that 35 bag umbrella and all damn thing there, keep it locked with DISUNOMICS podcast.
Yo people, what's good? Welcome again to another edition of Monday Morning News, brought to you by myself, DISUNOMICS, and let's get straight into it. You lot's boy, I mean the ops them, Matt Hancock, health sec, is always looking spooky for Matt. He's always catching the L one way or another, and this one is quite significant. So the Health Secretary's Department have been deemed unlawful by the courts for how they've handled contracts awarded during this pandemic. They were meant to publish details and award notice within 30 days of any contract awarded over 120 grand. Obviously didn't do this. They're also meant to publish some details of other contract over £1,000. That also wasn't published. The reason why he's meant to do this is because this is public money. I've worked in the public sector as a contractor, and there's a lot of red tape compared to when I worked in the private sector. Because of course you're dealing with mine and yours, your mum's, your dad's, everybody's money. This is public money. There's a lot of bureaucracy, and even procurement of certain goods and services. You can't just go, oh, I know this company, they're really good, I've used them before, my old company, let's go use them. No, you have to go through a process where you look at some of the verified suppliers. You have to make sure you get 3 to 4 quotes and all that type of stuff. It's to show no bias and all that type of stuff. Clearly, it wasn't done in this case. These details are also meant to be published because bodies such as the government, us the people, the NAO, and that's the National Auditing Office, can go through these contracts to make sure, do you know what I mean, everything's kosher, everything's halal. Obviously, them man did not do this, and one of the key contracts that everybody highlights is Matt Hancock and his acquaintance and former neighbour. So what happened was last year, Matt Hancock had a neighbour whose name is, let me get his name, sorry people, Alex Bourne, who hit him up on a young WhatsApp like, I should have my phone, yo dog, like I can pattern you up with some of these PPE kits. I know it's been a bit of a madness for the NHS, but I can sort you out. So Mr. Alex Byrne actually has his own company called Hancock, and they produce plastic cups and takeaway boxes for the catering industry. But they managed to secure contracts with the government for producing PPE kits. Mr. Alex Byrne and his company had no previous experience producing medical graded equipment. And obviously he's producing medical graded, I think, vials. What was it again? Yeah, vials, I got it right. Supplying 2 million per week to government. That's a lot of cash. So obviously the streets are on him. Nothing really is gonna happen to him, but this is something that I personally believe we should be kicking a fuss about. Man can't just be busting a man down during a global pandemic. That's crazy. Like, it's insane. That's like me being at a company, like maybe being a CFO for, I don't know, one of the big, for Google, and I'm just giving out contracts to my boys. Like, it's ridiculous. You can't do that. And he's probably gonna get away with it, and we shouldn't allow him to get away with it, making sure all the men are eating during the pandemic. That doesn't make no sense, fam. Anyway, the next bit of news, Australia versus the tech companies. This one's very interesting. Australia, since last year, they've been planning a controversial law that essentially is going to take on Facebook and Google. They are complaining that their news industry is in the mud, the news industry needs funding, and Facebook and Google have an unfair advantage in this space. Australian government has described Google and Facebook as having being a near essential utility with little market competition. And it's a dominant search engine, of course, Google. So they say, yeah, it's very, very needed for Australian people, but at the same time, you don't got no competition. This is mad. And look at our news industry, it's in the mud. So for example, Reuters polled some Australians, and 52% of them say they use social media as a source of news. People on my Instagram come to my page or my Twitter as a source of news. I get a lot of information on social media because you have journalists and people in the know tweeting live. So we see how impactful social media can be. Also, we've seen on Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, the flipping anti-vaxxers, you crackheads, coming on my mentions, chatting shit on Instagram, you absolute clowns. Let me not even go into what I'm going to. Let me keep the YouTube PG. But yeah, do you know what I mean? We see how information can be spread. Now, back to the matter at hand. The Australian government in 2018 launched, the Australian government regulatory body had an inquiry into the impact of Google and Facebook in terms of competition in the media advertising industry. And this is what they found. So the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, ACCC, found an imbalance of power between tech companies and the media. Of course, the media's in the mud. How many people pick up a newspaper these days or go to the news? You have to adapt. Even Sky News, I watch Bloomberg and Sky News on YouTube. So you kind of have to adapt. The ACCC recommended introducing a code of conduct to kind of level the playing field. So in July 2020, the Australian government unveiled a draft law to enforce this code of conduct. They want financial support to be needed for Australian news industry, as I said before. And in this code of conduct, essentially Google, which obviously owns YouTube, Google and Facebook will have to pay news media for content. Absolutely bonkers, in my opinion. And they don't, obviously that draft didn't define the worth of this content, but that's what they said they have to do. They want the news companies to operate like trading blocks. So a block is a group of entities or a group of countries come together and negotiate deals on a kind of perceived groups of interest. So they want the news companies to come together because obviously they're going to be more dominant, more impactful and a stronger proposition as one to negotiate with Facebook, with Google on this remuneration. So they want to negotiate what news appears in their news feeds and search results. There's also going to be, and one of the key parts of this draft is there will be a 10 million Australian dollar fine, which is about £5 million, or 10% of the competitor's local turnover, so the Australian turnover, their turnover in Australia, if there's breaches to this draft law. So they're not playing around. Initially, this is focused on Facebook and Google, but they intend to go into others first. They're hitting the big hitters first. Now, Facebook argue against this. Facebook, they're fighting this. They're saying hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue is received by the media. So I'm not really too sure about that. And also, one of the heads of Facebook in Australia said, publishers willingly choose to post news on Facebook as allow them to sell more subscriptions, grow their audience, and increase advertising revenue. Of course, that's a massive marketplace. Australia's competition watchdog, cited by the AFP news agency, says that for every $100 spent on online advertising, Google takes $53, Facebook takes $28, and the rest is bust down amongst others. Take away revenue from media outlets. So they're saying, yo, you man are eating, one man eats $53, another eats at $28, and we're out here busting it down. Do you know ones when your mum makes a big stew pot, your dad gets 17 meats, your uncle gets 15 meats, your auntie gets 12 meats, your mum gets 10 meats, and then you and your brothers and your cousins are sharing one drumstick. Like, that's kind of the vibes that the Australian news outlets are getting compared to the big tech companies. Facebook have announced that they will block Australian users from sharing or viewing news on their page. They're not ramping. They're not having a bar of it. They say, yeah, we'll block you. Nobody's above blocking. Blocker. That's the vibes Facebook are on. And me personally, I'm here for it because I think this is a fuckery. Now, Google originally threatened to remove its search engine from Australia if the law's passed. They say, listen, if you don't do this, calm. No, don't jump on a Google thing in Australia. Blocked, delete. However, they have dialed that back. Well, it seems like they dialed that back because Google have actually signed a deal with News Corp, which is Rupert Murdoch's news empire, for content. They're going to, in a 3-year agreement, they're going to be paying them for content. Google's also announced several deals with other Australian media companies, including a reported $30 million annual payment to Nine Entertainment. That's Australian dollars, that is. People don't know if Google are still going to take a madder action if this law goes through, but that's yet to be seen. It's expected this law will go through. It's got broad support from Parliament. It passed in the lower house, so it just needs to pass through the Senate, and it'll be reviewed in a year. So this is something to watch out for. I know some people that follow me, watch my stuff, or listen to my stuff, trying to say, are from Australia, or people got links to Australia. So it'll be very interesting to watch this, and we'll be interested to see if any other country is brave enough to take on Google and YouTube. Google and Facebook. And finally, the last bit of news. This is not my strong subject, but I definitely do find it very interesting. I wish I knew more about this. But we're going to talk space, yeah? Mars. Did they say men are from Mars or women are from Venus or something like that? Some dumb statement. Anyway, Mars is one of the many planets in the world. And when I say we, I mean NASA. I'm speaking on behalf of humans. NASA have, and their Perseverance robot buggy majig has landed on Mars. I think this is the fifth robot to land on Mars. So that's a big success for NASA, and the pictures are, in my opinion, breathtaking. So first things first, to kind of put in context how mad this is, Mars is actually 208 million, or 208.84 to be precise, million kilometers away from the Earth. A typical airplane, so if we're taking a typical long distance people carrier airplane, they travel at speeds between 880 to just under 930 kilometers per hour. Extremely fast. So if we were to take, for example, let's just assume, for example, that we had unlimited fuel in the plane, yeah? And gravity, the air wasn't an issue, whatever. We had food for days. Everything's fine, yeah? And we were traveling from Earth to Mars via the top end speed of people carrying planes, large planes, long distance planes. It will take 225,529 hours to get there. That is 9,397 days, which is 25.75 years. Well, my brother's even 25 years there. So he could have spent his whole life on a plane going to Mars. That is how far Mars is. It took the Perseverance rover 8 months to get there. So that shows the technology, the amazing technology. That is ridiculous speed. As per NASA, Perseverance left Earth at about a speed of 24.6 thousand miles per hour, 39,000 kilometers per hour. That is an absolute absurd amount of speed. This Perseverance robot cost $2.7 billion. That's like the value of some major basketball teams. That is a lot of money. $2.7 billion. Crazy money. And it's the fifth, and I said earlier, this is the fifth robot from NASA to land on Mars. The mission will last about 1 Martian year, so that's how you depict time in Mars, which is approximately 2 Earth years. And this can obviously be extended if the hardware is still in a healthy fashion. Now, the purpose of the trip, of course, is to search for life, any signs of life, but also to obtain rocks by selecting and packaging it and bring it back to Earth for testing. That's something definitely to watch this space on. Pardon me. And I'm actually quite interested in this. It's just spectacular. But I might be a bit of a geek. So yeah, that's this week's Monday Morning Gist. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe below. And let me know what you think of the video. Are you interested in Mars? Do you think this is fake news? Do you think this is conspiracy? Like those crazy anti-vaxxers in my Instagram comments? What do you think of Matt Hancock? Do you think he should be prosecuted? Do you think he should be made to resign? Or do you think it's not that deep? And also, whose side are you on? You're on the side of Australian government? You're on the side of Google and Facebook? Do you think Facebook are doing the right thing by threatening to, stop news being shared on their page? Or do you more side of Google trying to negotiate away through things? Please let me know. Don't forget, my Patreon link is below for fresh content. Join my Patreon, be DISUNOMICS Patreon, and get better content just like this. And of course, subscribe. I'm not on the YouTuber hands because, that's not my bag. But yeah, until next week, people, peace and blessings.